Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Ace. I'm here with Darren. Hi Darren, how's it going this evening?
Hello and welcome, everyone.
So we're going to do something a little bit different, something we've not done before. So let us know if you like it. Chuck it down in the comments, whether you're listening to this as a podcast or on YouTube. Chuck it down in the comments because we love to hear your thoughts. We want to do a lot more of this style kind of video stroke podcast. So if you like it, then definitely let us know. But what we want to do is we want to cover a bit of tactics. We recently came back from the Scottish Takeover, really good tournament, and we did all right, Darren?
Mate, we done absolutely friggin' awesome. 1-2 for Twisted Dice was pretty much spot on. I was well chuffed with that. Considering when we was talking about this before we was going, with a list I'd never played before, I thought I was going to do maybe a 3-2. So to come 4-1, that's absolutely, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a like amazing performance. So if you didn't know, Darren got second place and I got first place. So as Darren said, we got a Twisted Dice 1-2. We both used Tau, but two very, very dramatically different lists. And we thought it'd be really interesting for you guys for us to kind of talk through the lists, how they kind of operated, what we thought worked really well. So if you're interested in playing Tau, or you want an army that you think is going to kind of be pretty competitive, then we can give you some tips and tricks and hopefully help you get better and be more effective at your next tournament. So that's the idea of tonight. We'll try and keep it pretty succinct and snappy so it doesn't go on and we don't witter on forever. But we're going to try and fill you in on all the kind of details and help you out with your next tournament. So before we get stuck in, if you are listening to this podcast or you're listening to this video or whatever, you stumbled upon it for the first time, then please do give us a like and a sub. It helps us out tons. We're very, very active on podcasts. We put a glossy battle report up every single week. With Dice by Dice, beautiful terrain, beautiful armies. We're very active on Facebook and on Instagram. We run our own events. So if you like what we do and you'd like to support us further, we have a Patreon. We've got loads of cool stuff happening on our Patreon. So from this week, we've started releasing our battle reports early. We're potentially going to be doing a bit of coaching through the Patreon as well, whether that be painting, whether that be tactics. We've got an awesome Discord server where we've got loads of cool people that are chatting about either hobby or, tactics on lists. Just generally having a great time. It's a really cool place to be. You can get yourself some wicked swag, some exclusive dice, some great t-shirts. We have an exclusive gold member t-shirt, which is very, very cool. So loads of cool stuff. We're going to be doing Patreon only giveaways. So if you ever thought about kind of joining, now's your time because we've got loads planned over the next few weeks and months. But thanks very much for joining us. We're looking forward to kind of having a chat with you tonight. Right, Darren?
Yeah, that is exactly it, John. Exactly it. We're looking forward, well, I've been looking forward to get involved on this one.
Absolutely.
Talk about an army
cool.
I'm not really a great lover of.
Yeah.
However,
Well,
it kind of made me think about maybe joining the dark side.
it's interesting how you fall in love with an army, or not fall in love is a pretty strong word, but get interested in an army when you start winning and beating everybody, right?
Yeah, I got to admit, Tau not the play style that I normally go for. The play style I normally like is something that's fast moving. I like to be able to react on the board very, very quickly. If something happens, I like to be able to counteract that with either something that can move fast or at least can get around the board to deal with it. Now, as we said at the beginning, me and your list were definitely chalk and cheese. That was the yin and yang. They were totally different in all aspects. Yours was very, very quick, very mobile, as mine was, I'm just going to sit here and maybe move 5 inches.
And then blow you off the table. So very, very different. So what we thought we'd do is, first of all, let's go through your list, Darren. Talk me through kind of your list and and kind of how it works in principle.
Sure. So I've got 2 battalions. So the first battalion, we're going to be going with the Hydra Fireblade. So I've got 2 of those in this one. I've got 3 strike teams in there. So squad of 5. One of them armed with the pulse rifle. Sorry, 4 armed with the pulse rifle, and then 1 armed with the microlight. And then in my fast attachment, I'm going to be going with 3 squads of 10 shield drones. Really, that, you know, they play a massive great part in this army. Then moving over to heavy, I'm going to go with 3 squads of broadsides, and they're all going to be armed with the smart missile systems, the velocity tracker, and they're just absolutely really good damage. So they've got some good distance on them. And then we've also got the advanced targeting system as well, which gives me the +1 to the AP.
Yep. Yeah, makes sense.
So next battalion, we've got a Hydra Fireblade with the microlight. I've got a Commander Crisis Battlesuit. Now this is more of a guy that's going to help buff the actual army itself up. Giving them the Warlord trait, where with the Warlord trait, it allows me then to choose a unit to increase the
AP
explode. That's it.
That's right.
That's it.
Yeah, so it's for unity devastation, and what it means is that you nominate a unit, an enemy unit at the beginning of the shooting phase. Every unit within 6 inches of your commander, any roll to wound of 6 is +1 AP,
which is mental, which is absolutely mental.
Really nice.
Also in there, I've got another 3 squads, 3 strike teams in there again, 5-man squads, pulse rifles and microlights, and then I've got a vanguard detachment of ethereal, and then going with 3 elites, which is the farsight marksman with the microlights. They are absolutely friggin' awesome, hitting on 3s, and they can just cause so much trouble on the actual board itself. I think I've missed out a Hydra Fireblade in there. I had 3 of those.
Okay.
I think I said 2.
and that so that last attachment, that's Sasaya, isn't it? So that's the one that gives you access to the stratagem that like basically beams loads of marker lights everywhere, right?
Absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot
on. So that's really important, right?
Yeah, and that's something to talk about in a sec.
Yeah.
But what we've gone with on the set, so we've kind of gone with a custom set on here. So we've gone with the custom set where the broadsides don't suffer penalties for moving heavy weaponry.
Stabilization systems. Yep,
that's correct. As you can tell, I'm not a Tau player, so I can't say the exact wordings of this. But this is where John.
But it's all right.
Very handy. And then we've also gone with the extra AP on the missiles.
Hardened warheads.
That's it. All the hardened warheads. And it just then turns your no line of sight missiles, which are strength 5, 30-inch range with 0 AP, and then putting that up to +1 because of the hardened warheads, +1 because of the targeting system. It just becomes an absolute beast of a unit.
Yeah, absolutely. So so basically you've got your bonuses of your much more sort of you're going to be able to take things out of cover, because there a lot of the stuff's indoors cover, and then on top of that it's got the extra AP, so things are struggling to have a save. So you got some real kind of ways to make those broadsides even better than they already were, right?
Absolutely spot on. Absolutely.
And then your Sasaya detachment, the Sasaya trait gives you a reroll, a hit and a wound. So then you're making sure that your marksmen are super accurate. because they're hitting on threes, but you means you get that reroll, and then on top of that, you then have access to the Sacia stratagem, which allows you then to put a marker light down. So yeah, so you've got some toys there, right?
Yeah, got some really, 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 really cool toys, which is cool. Now, the only thing I don't have to hand is the strat cards with me, so I can't take
That's
the
fine.
exact strats, which is a shame. But the over the actual weekend itself, come across some various different types of armies. So I had a chance of before the tournament started, the night before, got 2 games in, 2 very, very different games. I played the first test game was with Vicky, and I went up against their Tyranid list.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got some, real fast moving units coming in. Learned very, very quickly that you've got to learn to screen this army off. That's the most important thing about it. If you don't screen and those broadsides get tied up, it's pretty much game over. Second test game was against Salamanders with all the Flamers, and again, learned very, very quickly that the screen is you've got to play with that screen properly, and learned very, very quickly that this was going to be the army that's going to do me well. It's going to do me proud over the next couple of days. And it did.
Mm-hmm. It did. But yeah, so you've basically got 3 damage dealer units, right? Nothing else. Yeah.
That's
So
pretty
you
much it.
basically have, yeah, you really, so you don't have kind of anything coming from anywhere else, right? So basically, that's just you have 3 units. Everything else is just support, right?
And that's great, yes.
So from that point of view, if something has the ability to stop those things from shooting, then it's really, really bad news for you, right?
Absolutely correct, John.
So that kind of means that ultimately is your biggest weakness in the list, and the biggest thing that you have to kind of be really, really careful of, right? That's kind of accurate?
Absolutely spot on.
Cool. So yeah, so you had your practice games. You potentially made a few errors of judgments with your screening, but it was good time. It's always a good time to learn it when you're getting that practice game in, and particularly if you're coming to an event you haven't had a lot of practice. I definitely recommend that you try to make time to get some practice games in, because I think the chances are like you might have lost your first couple of games, Darren, if you hadn't had that opportunity, right?
Yeah, and that's really important. That if I didn't have those practice games in, I definitely would have lost. Definitely my first 3 games. There's no shadow of a doubt on it. So it gave me that opportunity then to learn very, very quickly and see how the army plays. But if you're going to do tournaments, I would recommend that if you are going to play an army, get down your club or at least get with some friends and at least give it a good 5 or 6 games in before you actually start thinking about taking it into the tournament side, just so you know how the army actually plays itself.
I think that's really wise, really, really good advice. I think, yeah, absolutely. If you're unsure of an army and you're taking it because you know it's good, and in this case, we knew your list was good on paper, but if you haven't got the time to play, you haven't got a chance to kind of get some good practice runs with it, you're gonna be in trouble no matter how good the list is. So yeah, so if you come across a good list, this is kind of a really kind of general advice. You come across a good list, then just absolutely make sure that you get the opportunity to give it a few reps before you bring it to a tournament. You'll definitely you won't regret that. I think is fair.
No, that's it. So the way I pretty much played this army was a couple of games I played it differently. So the first game that I came up against was with Ali with his Ultramarines. As we know, Ultramarines at the moment are very, very good. They can cause a lot of damage, but most of his army had a threat range of 24 inches. If you add the movement in there as well, it comes up to a 30-inch threat range. Ali had turn one. It was Dawn of War, so it's just like straight head on, and it was nice and simple. Like with that one, I gave Ali that opportunity to go first, and the reason why I let him go first on that one, it was more the fact that when Dawn of War, so I can make sure that wherever he went on the table, it gave me that opportunity to smash into him. But it also then meant that once, because he was attacking, he had to set up first. I could see roughly where his army was, and then allowed me then to deploy pretty much all my army all over to the left hand side of the board, just so I can reduce some of that firepower that's going to be coming in. Allow me then to pick off bits bit by bit as they're coming closer and closer. And that was a real crucial thing, because with Ali's list, he had the Leviathan with all the guns, which, as I said, has a 30-inch threat range on it. But he also had 2 squads of the I've forgotten what they're called. What's the one with the gauntlet? The guns on the gauntlet.
The aggressors.
Aggressors. That's it. It's on the tip of my tongue, because he had 2 squads of those coming over, and they were pretty much halfway across the board. Set up in the middle of the board. It just allowed me then just to play to that. With Ali going first, I measured myself out, so I pretty much backlined, measured myself out, so I knew that even if he got 30 inches across the board, the 6 inches across the board, he wasn't going to be within range, apart from the Thunderfire cannon and the Whirlwind. That's the only 2 things that are going to take damage from. But with the fact with the shield drones, they're going to be targeting the shield drones direct, so any multiple damage is going to hurt. But it wasn't too bad. That 4-up invuln save was absolutely massive on that one. What it then allowed me to do is, when coming into my turn, it then meant that I spent a CP to allow 1 unit to re-roll its wounds. I'd done the Monkai. No, it's not Monkai, is it? It's the Kayan, that's it. Allow me to re-roll all my hits on 3 units. And so with those 3 units, I'm powering up the broadsides, because they're going to be the most powerful things on there. Slapping on the microlights onto the Leviathan, because that was the next thing that was going to be hitting me next turn, because that had been in range. And then targeting anything that was going to be in range that next turn. They were my priority targets. So the Leviathan, there was a couple of squads of Marines, some aggressors, and then just pretty much open fire. So the other one I found was really, really good, was the strat where you pick 1 unit, anything within 6 inches of that unit all took a microlite. That just made a big difference all the way through. So popping that down, then going off, firing off my microlites, spending the 1 CP. So the Leviathan at this point was on one microlite, spending the extra CP. So firing a microlite off, spending the CP to get D3 plus 1, which helped really big. So it allowed me to get 5 microlites off onto the Leviathan, and then just once I got the 5 onto him, I was just putting microlites off the units that I knew I was going to shoot, just to try to get at least 4 microlites on, just to reduce or take away the cover saves, because that's crucial. What it meant
sorry to interrupt, Darren. So that stratagem is called Orbital Marker Disruption Uplink, which is the Sasea stratagem. So you use that stratagem in the shooting phase, pick an enemy unit that's visible to a Sasea Sept character from your army. That unit and all other enemy units within 6 inches gain a marker light. So a really, really crucial part of your strategy, right?
That's it. Absolutely spot on. So then once opening fire onslaught of the Leviathan, just 1 squad of broadsides, 72 missiles coming through with the direct line of sight, strength 7, then going up to AP 3. It really did absolutely tear that Leviathan apart. And then just to make sure I just finished him off, I just put a couple of the seeker missiles in it, just to give it that little edge. He did save 1, but the other 2 managed to get through and just put him to sleep, which was really cool. And then the rest of the missiles then just opened up and then just started taking off, the little squads of troops, scouts and things like that, which was really, really cool. And then the time everything else was coming in, the biggest things that were taking off the damage were pretty much disappearing. So the time these aggressors got to me, they weren't really a threat anymore, because it was just pretty much turn 3, turn 4. It was pretty much game over. I scored really, really well, really
And
high.
you were using command and control node for the commander to give you reroll fail wound rolls, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So that when that Leviathan's toughness 8 against your shooting at strength 7, so that's slowing you down somewhat. But then if you put that on and then you're re-rolling all those wounds, then suddenly you're getting through them relatively quickly, right?
Oh yeah, spot on. The other thing is, obviously, of course, you've got the D3 damage on each one of those missiles that go through. D3 damage is crucial. You're putting off a hell of a lot of damage into him.
Yeah.
Even if you don't manage to get him down like fully turn 1, even if you can put it, at least get him down to the bottom bracket, that makes the Leviathan not as effective as he was at the beginning.
Yeah, it's not so scary if he's, and it's a real viable tactic. If you can't kill anything, particularly if it's a scary unit, but you can really reduce his output, then you're already kind of on the right tracks, aren't you? And if that's his key damage dealing unit, then yeah, that's a really viable tactic.
Absolutely spot on. The first game didn't really lose a lot in that game. The drones were just pretty much bosses all the way through it. They were just taking up their 4-up saves, their 4-up invuns like no tomorrow. Any ones that did go through, pretty much the 5-up invuns, the 5-up feel no pains were doing well, doing me justice. So I was very, very proud of those beautiful drones. They were doing well.
Can't go wrong, right? And I think so you had basically 30 drones in your list. I think that's probably about the right number to be able to make sure that you can come through turn 1 without too much damage, right?
Absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on.
Good stuff. So you go on.
The only thing I would say I'd done wrong with that turn 1 was maybe I put the fire warriors, not the fire warriors, the strike teams up front. What I should have really done is maybe put the drones, a line of drones up front, post the actual the strike teams.
Sure.
It just I think they would have been a lot more effective and given less away in terms of, because the strike teams are going to die quickly, and I need them more than I need the drones, just purely to get those little microlights off. Game 2, who did I have game 2? I'm just trying to think how I played this one. Trying to think about game 2 now.
It's not very good, is it, Darren?
Max. Oh, that's it. I had Max.
Yeah, Maxi boy.
Max. So Max was going Raven Guard. This one, I think I'd really wanted turn 1, just so I can just get up there, but it didn't work. Max beat me on the roll off. Max went first. What I was kind of hoping was if I could have gone turn 1, is put a better screen up and just kind of screened him off more, just so it pushed him up the field a lot more. But we went the deployment map was the long ways, which was
Hammer and Anvil,
which worked in my favour on that side. But what I'd done with this, because Max had won the roll off, this time I used the drones in a different way. So instead of having the drones behind, I sacrificed the drones and I pushed the drones up forward. But with Max's army, with the Raven Guard, it's more of a close combat army. That's where they're gonna be more troublesome for you. So with this one, I backlined the broadsides, because I knew he had to come to me. That's crucial. I knew he had to come down my side of the board to get to me. So bearing that in mind, I kept all the microlights, the Hydra higher blades, kept them back with the commander, and I just pretty much put 20 drones up front and just screened it off really, really well. Made it hard for Max to get anywhere near. When Max's units did start hitting in, he had 2 Victor's Warsuits. He got a squad of the
Centurions.
Yeah, that's it. The Centurions didn't come down turn 1.
Oh, okay.
They weren't there turn 1.
Okay.
but you had 3 units coming up quite quick. All his captains were starting to charge up the board. The board itself was kind of like a forest board, so there's a lot of open areas on there. So it was kind of a little bit of a firing gallery for myself. There wasn't much I couldn't see. Going into it, Max was quite clever, so I had all the drones were going back, so all the drones then would tail back, so they become within 6 inches of a broadside. So when the drones did get charged, it meant that I could then overwatch. What Max done was quite smart. He put the Victor's warsuits in first, to try to bait me out, to try to get me to go for the overwatch on the Victor's warsuits. I wasn't worried about the Victor's warsuits. I knew that if I fired the overwatch to the Victor's warsuits, the missiles are not going to be doing that much damage, because I haven't gone for the sept where I'm hitting on 5s and 6s. My suits are only hitting in 6s in Overwatch. That's quite important. So what I did, so when the Victor's warsuits in, I just let it happen. Can't stop it. But when these Reavers come in, that's when I then fired off 72 missiles of the no line of sight, 72 missiles of the line of sight missiles, and I pretty much cleared the majority of the Reavers off just in Overwatch. Really, really important that when you do the Overwatch, to make sure your microlights are in first. Hopefully you get that lucky 6 off, because you get that lucky 6 off, that makes the world of a difference, because that then means you're re-rolling 1s in Overwatch, and that is crucial, because that getting 6s for me, was not easy. Being an alt player, I'm used to getting 6s for that more attacker. So me seeing 6, it's like, I've got this all day long. Giving the old proper wah. But unfortunately, the DAC attack on the tower is a little bit different. But getting those ones off, it made a big difference. It helped me out. I put a little bit damage onto the Reavers. What it meant for Max, because he'd lost quite a lot of Reavers in the Overwatch, combat-wise, again, the drones are absolute bosses. They were just absolutely saving all the damage that the Victor's warsuits and the Reavers put out. I was just pretty much saving them like bosses. And then what I'd done after that, soon as combat was finished, nothing else was going to charge them. So the drones, I pushed them forward. So I didn't advance them, but I moved them going up towards Max's area. So leaving then the Victor's warsuits kind of in my deployment zone still. Only reason being is that I need to keep the screen going. So the Centurions are going to be coming down next. I need to make sure that I'm pushing that screen further back, making those aggressors less effective. So going into my turn 1, pretty much cleared off the Victor's warsuits. Turn 1, they really weren't a problem at all with the missiles. And then it then allowed me to start popping off his chaplain, his librarian, and his captain. Just pretty much cleared them off, only because everything that was up forward, I just absolutely annihilated with the amount of shots that went through. And then coming into turn 2, it was pretty much, again, just start advancing forward on the actual army itself. This is one game I didn't actually get a chance to actually do all the rerolls. I just pulled myself forward. There wasn't really much there to shoot, if that makes sense. And then turn 3, it was pretty much, that was it, game. It was just, you just can't dodge the amount of fire that's coming from those broadsides. And that was it.
Yeah, when they go off big time, right?
Oh yeah, it's like holding a firework in your hand. You'd be a bit silly to be that close, and if it does go off, it's going to hurt.
Yes, absolutely. So that brought you into your game 3.
So game 3 was Admech.
Yeah.
Admech itself is an interesting one. With Alan's Admech, it was he had the -1 on everything to hit, and the Dragoons were -2. This was, so I was going first on this one. Alan let me go first. The only downside for this was Alan backlined everything. Alan had a better range than myself, so it meant that I had to get myself forward. So instead of going for the re-rolls, I elected to go for the advance, which then allowed me to I can't remember the name of this one, John, you're gonna have to help me out.
Moncar.
Moncard, that's it. So a Moncard advanced everything forward to get my broadsides into range. Again, keeping that screen going forward, because Alan did have the jazz hands, and he also had the other dudes that are really good in combat, which I can't remember the names. What are they?
What they're called? They're the Electro Priests.
That's it, Electro Priests. So the electric piece were then just jumping out of all the vehicles. So I knew they were coming. But I didn't want to allow myself to get hit by them. So advanced everything forward, made sure the drones were forward, pretty much getting halfway across the board with the drones, but it gave me a good screen for when the termite drill dropped in with the electric hands, or the jazz hands, that I can actually stop them from actually causing all the damage. Pulling myself forward, I did find it frustrating because I had the firepower there to do it. Because that -1, I was finding that I was struggling to hit him. When I were getting things through, I was making things, I was making things pay for it. Had the little robots that done all the with the plasma guns.
Yeah, the destroyers, the Catch-Factory destroyers. Yeah.
Now, because I played Captain Whack, I know what these destroyers do, and I knew like target priority for myself was to clear those off. So
they're lethal.
They are absolutely lethal. So turn 1, he had 3 squads of those. Turn 1 was pretty much priority for me, was to clear those off, and I think I just got them off, and I started firing at his transport of the dragoons. But because of that extra minus, it really did hurt. It meant I was now hitting on 6s, and I didn't get many through, and I managed to kill a dragoon off. Alan played a little bit differently. He then started pulling those dragoons back. I think if it had been myself on that one, I would have pulled those forward to try get into my lines, try get to the broadsides. But that
makes sense.
Yeah, with this one, with the drones, he was firing at me. I was saving like a boss with the drones and doing all the magic with the feel no pains. But so he was hitting me, but I was saving like a boss. But then it was going the other way around, where I couldn't hit him and he couldn't save. And it was kind of like a nice little trade-off, which worked in my favor. As soon as I managed to get myself a little bit further forward, got all the nastiness off, and weathered the storm with the jazz hands. When they come in and they done stupid amount of shots, I think it's like 3 shots a piece from them.
And they're nasty. They're real nasty.
He had a squad of 20 of them, and they do like double damage on 6s as well, which is absolutely horrible. But they pretty much cleared my screen of drones. They killed 10 drones off like no tomorrow. I couldn't save that many saves. What it did mean for myself was, though, my broadsides were far enough back that he couldn't target them or get into combat, which then meant for myself, my next turn 3, or even turn 4, just one squad of broadsides just pretty much cleared that squad off. And at that point, I was just picking off vehicles like no tomorrow.
Nice.
That was a different way of playing that one. So with that one, because of the back line, it was important for me to advance to get to him.
So from a sort of a general like tactics point of view, so you that one you absolutely didn't have it your own way. So he's not really playing to the way you almost like want him to play. So in your mind, how are you kind of dealing with the fact that that actually at the end of turn 1 potentially you're not really quite where you want to be? How do you kind of how do you plan that around? What's going through your mind when you think, oh, hang on a minute, this is looking a bit more sort of sticky?
Yeah, so I suppose one thing I missed out there was setup was important, because I knew that Alan was going to go first.
Mm-hmm.
oh sorry, because I knew I was going to be going first on this one, and the way it was, I pretty much put most of my stuff as far forward as I possibly can, but making sure that I still had the back of the board behind me secured off, because that's really, really crucial. That when you're playing Tell, what you don't want to do is get too greedy, start pulling yourself forward, and then forgetting about your 9-inch bubbles behind you. Because I knew he had the Electro Priest coming in with the jazz hands, what I couldn't afford to do was I couldn't leave a gap open behind for him to then drop in and then start smashing me from behind, because that's
no one wants to be smashed from behind, right?
No, that's it. No one wants that, John. No one wants that in life at all. So going in for setup, it just meant that thinking about what he was planning on doing and the range, I had to be aggressive with Tau, and that meant that I had to pull as much stuff further forward as I possibly can, but not putting myself in a situation where I'm gonna leave myself open for attack.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I think that's sometimes you get matchups that are a bit more challenging. Maybe the army is a little bit different from what you're expecting, and I think you got to think straight off the off. How are you going to maximize your opportunity to be effective in that game? And I think that's exactly what happened there. There's some tough elements of that. Tau don't like the -1 because their ballistic skill being a 4+ natively, and they don't like being outranged because your army actually relatively shorter range than some. So you've got to then maximize your opportunities to be effective, and that's what you got to think of. Even if it's a tough matchup, how are you going to kind of play it? So that makes a lot of sense. So you've won 3 games. You must be feeling pretty good by this point. You're going into game 4. Who
Yeah,
playing game 4?
At this point, I was kind of well chuffed myself going into day 2 on 3 wins. Of course, I couldn't stop the inevitable. It was going to happen at some point in this tournament. I come up against the dreaded Grey Knights. Now, this was with Steph. Stefan's a really, really good player. He knows his Grey Knights pretty damn well. I believe he's won that tournament quite a few times, hasn't he?
He's won it twice. Yep.
Yep. So I've seen
knows what he's doing.
I've never played for Stefan before, but I have seen him play, and I know he's a really, really good player.
I think he was your pick for the tournament, right?
Yeah, yes, he was. So that's another crucial thing. So as we was talking about the actual army list itself, he was my favourite to win it.
Yeah.
Of course, I wasn't going to choose you.
No, of course not. That'd be a silly thing to do.
But I think with Stefan's list, it was kind of like a little bit of nostalgia for myself and what he had. Stefan doesn't go with the Paladin bomb.
Yeah, that's true.
He's got 3 of the walkers.
Dread Knights, yeah.
Dread Knights, that's it. 3 Dread Knights. He's got 3 strike teams in there, and he's also got 3 of the. No, he's not. He's got 2 battalions. I'm just trying to think exactly what he's got on his list.
He's got two battalions, and then the Vanguard or whatever it is that gives you the ones for the Dread Knights or whatever it is.
That's it.
Supreme Command Detachment. Or I don't know. Whatever it is, he's got 2. He's got 2 battalions and then something else. So, but yeah.
So with Stefan's list, it's a very heavy smite bomb. Now, one thing I know that we don't like in Tau is smite.
Absolutely.
We've got no way of stopping it, and we don't really have a great defense in dealing with it. So, bearing that in mind, with that one, Steph won the roll off, so he was going to go first. So, all it meant for myself was then setting up to defend was pretty much making sure I had as many shield drones up front as possible. And the plan of attack with this was that I knew I kind of backlined the broadsides. Because I knew that Stefan's threat range of his guns were 24 inches. So with that movement, on most things, it was a threat range of 30. And I know that the smite was only a 24-inch range as well. What it meant for myself was just I knew it was going to be difficult. It was put those drones up much forward as I possibly can. But more importantly, because those interceptors, what I don't want them doing is the shunt move and leaving myself vulnerable and leaving like a 9-inch gap open somewhere for him to get behind me. Going into turn one, Stefan was looking for that gap. He was proper going around looking to go for that 9-inch gap. The only thing I did leave him was a 3-inch gap, which meant he dropped himself a librarian in with Terminator armor, and he'd done that goddamn vortex bomb, and that unfortunately caused me more hassle because it did really start pumping off.
It's nasty, that, isn't it?
Yeah, but like as soon as that happens, there's not much you can really do upon it. But all it meant for myself was to counteract that. It just meant I had to start screening off the broadsides, and then that's where the strike teams were then rushing forward to make sure they got in between him and the broadsides. But like Stefan played that really, really interesting. So he went first. He went really aggressive. So he pulled all the stuff forward within the within the 24 inches away from himself. So we're going again. We're going long ways on this way. So he's pulling quite forward. So where like I'm kind of got the mindset that he's going to come rushing for me. It didn't quite work like that. So what he done turn one, which was quite smart, he actually backed off. He advanced everything backwards opposed to going forwards. And what he was trying to do there was just kind of lure himself into a false sense of security and trying to make me go forward to try and shoot him.
Clever.
It's very, very clever. It's very, very clever. But I didn't go for it. I kind of held my ground, screened out a little bit further, just to wait for his stuff then to drop down. But what that does mean for Stefan is instead of having half his units going into attack, it meant that then everything is coming in turn two. And that's where it really hurt. The amount of smite damage that was coming from him, I was struggling to keep my drones up. So by the end of turn two, pretty much most of my drones were all gone. Turn three, most of my strike teams were gone. Turn four, it was just then going into my broadsides. Which at the end of that game, I pretty much just had one the fireblade up in the building. And that was pretty much it. There's not much you can really do when you've got all that smite coming at yourself, and it was pretty much the smite that was doing the damage. Don't get me wrong, the shots were when they were getting through were good, but it was the smite that was just clearing me off for days.
Nasty, really nasty.
Yeah, and he was getting it off, so like the smites were going off on 4+. So, and it was just you cast it off. It cast a spell first, then it gets it off. I can't remember exactly how that goes, but it was brutal, absolutely brutal, and he just absolutely cleared house with all the smites. But it was cool. Learned a lesson. The lesson I took away from that one is if you're going to go up against Grey Knights, ask that question if you're going to play anyone. If you've got any way or any strats that can get within 3 of any of my units. And that's probably the one that I knew about it. I've listened to loads of podcasts with regards to it, and I didn't do nothing about it. I left that open. But look, it is what it is. Learned a lesson from it. All I had to do from this one, I knew as soon as I started losing the drones, that I was losing them. It was a case of I knew I was going to struggle to win it, but mindset behind it was then to try to score as much as I possibly could, to still try to go for podium, or at least hope that whoever he goes up to next, or if John goes up to next, that they don't score as well. Because all my other games I'd scored really, really high. Hopefully still managed to get onto podium. That was my main mindset, whether to get third or second. So it was cool. It was interesting.
So I think that's really, really, really important, and I think that's probably the key thing from this is when you go into that kind of, particularly if you've managed to be in a really great position where you're going into game 4 unbeaten and with a good score already on the board, and you don't want to think too far in advance. Think every game, actually, hang on a minute, right, this is the game that I'm playing right now. How am I going to get the best out of this? What am I going to do? How am I going to try and win this? When you get in a place where actually the reality is you've probably lost the game. It's out of your hands, and you're playing a little bit of damage limitation by that point. You've got to start thinking, right, okay, so I'm not just going to make a load of stupid decisions. I'm not just going to go and throw the game away, because if you realise that the game's already over, there's no point in making silly moves that just lose you more points. It's much better to do exactly the same as what Darren's suggesting, which is start thinking about, hang on a minute, like the chances are there's only probably going to be one player that goes undefeated. So I've still got something to play for here, and I still want to see how high I can place. And if you go back into that mindset, then you start playing for every point. And not only playing for every point helps you out from a finishing position, what it also does is it helps you to become a better player, because you're continuing to try and make as many good moves as you can, and kind of think the game through. Where it's very easy to get into that place where you've kind of lost the game and your mind goes off it a little bit. You're just thinking about, right, I'm going to have lunch next, and I don't care about this, on to the next game. So just to keep focused is really important. So I think that's a really good point. So you lost your first game, but you've got a big score on the board, so you go into your last game. How does that game go?
So last game was against the Dark Angels.
Mm-hmm.
And this was with our friend Scott.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it out there, Scott. You're a cheeky little monkey, and the reason being is one tip I can give anyone is, when you're going to play anyone, it's about the questions you ask pre-game.
Yeah.
So I knew some of the shenanigans that his army can do, as for playing it, people at the club, at my local club. So one of the questions I asked was, have you got any way of, or what's the maximum range that your bikes can go once it advances and once it moves in advance? So we established that, and then the next question I asked was, have you got any way of going again? Which kind of got a no. That was the farthest it can go. I was like, okay, cool. So I set my shield drones up again. So backlines, because I know he's got to come to me. So I make sure I backline as best I can. Setting my drones up. So the drones was going to be taking the damage first of all. But I set my drones so once his bikes were in, they'll be exactly just over 12 inches away. So that meant that he couldn't get the any combat off. But what I'd done was, on this last game, is I kind of put two of my strike teams around the corner, because I didn't think anything could get into combat. But what I wanted them to do is not get shot, because they were going to play a massive great part in causing a lot of damage. So Scott goes into turn one, advances those bikes. He's moved up the board quite well. Then the cheeky little monkey pulls their strat out, which then meant the bikes can do it again. And this point, I wasn't I wasn't impressed. I was kind of like, now Scott, we did talk about this at the beginning. You did say that was the match you gave, and he goes, oh well, I know it's a bit gamey, but I was like, listen, fair play, man. You got me. You pull my pants down. You're tickling me in a place that I don't want to be tickled in. This is how I deal with it. And he done some damage. He done some real damage. He managed to clear quite a few of the drones off with all the shooting from those bikes. But I managed to negate a lot of the firepower, because I did keep a lot of the stuff further back. So it did mean that a lot of stuff couldn't get to me. But what he did have in the army was 3 squads of the bikes. I think there were squads of 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
You also had you had 4. No, you didn't. You had 5 of the or was it 4 of them, of the speeders with all the missiles?
5
God,
speeders.
yes, 5 of the missiles. And then you had the command barge that gives the -1 to hit as well, which again, Tau really doesn't like that at all. So he done the damage. He failed to charge. He failed the charge. He didn't get the charge off. He could roll 1 dice, but it meant he had to get 5 or 6. He didn't chance it because he didn't want to get the he just didn't chance it. He needed the CP because he spent a hell of a lot of CP the first turn. So going into my turn 1, it was kind of like the gloves were off. I was going to punish him for it. And hell did I punish him for it. Now, because I'd backlines, had some drones behind, what I'd done with those drones, again, I pulled those forward. So they kind of replenished what I'd lost at the front. So just in case I fail my shooting, I'm stopping those bikes then shooting me or getting into combat, locking me up. So the drones play that massive great part. I advanced the drones, got them up forward to create that next screen, but making sure I've still got that little tail coming back to the broadsides within the 6 inches or within the 3 inches. So I got the save. But it's really important that you make sure you've got that tail coming back. So if they do get charged, you've got that ability to fire so much firepower back. That's the crucial bit, or at least give that little bit extra damage in your Overwatch. So what that meant for myself was I pulled everything in close and tight to get the max amount of benefits. I pulled the thing off where I'm re-rolling all my hits on my 3 units. Started firing my microlights off, making sure I got the command barge. Now, one strat I done first of all, because he had everything all clustered in the middle to give all the benefits, so like the extra hits, the -1s to hit. I used the Taos version of the
orbital bombardment.
That's it. Oh, you're taking the words right out of my mouth tonight, John.
I'm trying, mate. I'm trying.
So we've done the Taos version of that, which is 3 CP, and because of that, it absolutely done wonders, mate. Absolutely done wonders for the first time in the weekend. It actually got pretty much everything in range. It was doing like 2-3 damage on pretty much everything.
It's pretty good, isn't it? It's pretty good.
Yeah, and then I slapped down the microlight bomb, so giving everything within 3 inches of that unit. So 6 inches of that unit, an extra microlight. Because everything was all clumped together, it meant that so much was taking that, which was cool. And then just making sure I got as many microlights off on the command barge, and then once the command barge was up to 5 CP, I was then pushing out as much of the bikes to try and make sure they don't have any extra cover saves or anything like that. Yeah. So target priority was, first of all, was take out the command barge. So I would up all my
Dark Shroud
on the first
for those
one.
of you that don't know what that is. So that's the Dark Shroud. Yeah,
that's it. So the first unit I went fired. I then done the wall of trait where I got the 1 unit to allow me to re-roll the wounds.
Yeah.
Sorry, the CP to allow me to re-roll my wounds, and then obviously the exploding 6s. Fired everything. Fired my low line of sight missiles and the seeker missiles into the command barge. The command barge went pop, and it really did explode. It took 4 mortal wounds off everything else, which is really, really cool. I was absolutely loving that vehicle going up. It was just like the highlight of my day. Took a couple of bikes out. It was cool. Because the broadsides, they're missile pods, we've got 4 individual pods. It meant that I had a couple of bikes where, like towards the end of it, there was like my last squad to fire off. I had 1 bike on its own, another bike on its own, and another bike on its own. With the bikes, you can't let the bikes survive because they will automatically pass their morale. And that's crucial because, like, I need to fire everything into them. But what I've done is I just made sure those bikes were gone. From my point to the thing I'd scored at the beginning was to choose things. So those bikes really had to go. But because I could spread my missiles out, it meant that I evenly spread those missiles out over the 3 bikes. And then just absolutely, rips them apart. At this point, I was then taking off some of the characters, which was cool. Scott then knew that he was in a bit of trouble, so he then started pulling his stuff backwards. Because with those speeders, they've got the range. They've got more range of myself than I have him.
They got loads of range.
That's it. So and then meant on turn 2. I had to start then becoming aggressive with the towel. Plus, I wanted to score high, so I then started pulling the towel forward. I had no ability to advance and all the normal shenanigans because I'd gone for the re-rolls because that was more important to get that off turn 1. If I didn't, I think it would be a different type of game. But then going forward meant that those drones were just, sorry, the broadsides were just absolutely tearing off his scouts. So I was taking out the scouts next because they were the ones that had taken out my microlights. So they were priority on the no line of sight missiles because they're not going to get cover saves on them. And then the line of sight missiles were then taking out his speeders. Once the speeders were gone, it was just a case of just a couple of troops left on the board. At that point, I was taking this to my advantage, and I was just pretty much just going around and just trying to kill as less as I can, but to score as much as I possibly could. Because I didn't need to kill everything. All I needed to do was just kill one unit each turn, and that was going to get me to kill more and hold more. And that's really important, just to max out on it. And at the end of the game, it was, yeah, okay, the army didn't really move that much. It was more the drones that were getting into position, but it did allow me to cause, that much trouble that I was pretty much wiping out a lot of armies, or big chunks of the armies, pretty much turn 1, turn 2, making it a lot easier for myself to survive the rest of the actual battle.
Yeah, good. So, so just to kind of ask you a few questions around kind of around the list. So, it's a fairly static army, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So, how, from a kind of a game point of view, did you find that you were up against it because you couldn't move that much, or how did you play around that?
So the interesting part about it, because the army is very static and it's very slow moving, the army itself, you do have to castle, but in my mindset when playing the actual army itself, so a lot of the games were, it's knowing when to move it. And I think we had this conversation ourselves, John. It's like, it's knowing when to actually start pulling your army forward to actually start scoring. And I found that most of the time it was like turn 3, turn 4, that's when I needed to then start coming away from my zone to start pulling myself forward to start scoring those points.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's more than anything, and I think this goes for any army that's very, very static. Is the game is designed to be an objective holding game. So at some point you're going to have to go and score some objectives, or you're not going to win the game. And half the trick and the tactic with an army that's very, very static, and it is very much just based on pretty much tabling your opponent, is you have to know when you're going to go forward and try and take those objectives. If you don't get that right, you can still end up losing the game. And I think that's very, very crucial. If you're going to take one of those type of lists, don't just think that you literally are going to be able to stay there all game, because there will come a point where you're going to have to start to move.
That's it. So top tips on that, on my army. If you're going to play a close combat army, make sure you backline as best you can, put the drones forward. If you're going up against a shooty army that has better range than yourself, then I would recommend that you kind of frontline as best you can, getting your units as far forward as you possibly can, but not forgetting to close your back doors, that nothing's going to be dropping in behind. I think that's probably the top tip I can give you on that one.
Absolutely. I think,
if you're going up against a shooting army with high damage, try Hydra drones if possible. So they're shooting on your broadsides opposed to your drones, because your drones are going to give you your 4-up invuln. But more importantly, if they've taken the damage if the damage has been inflicted over from the broadside onto the drones, if it's D3 or D6 damage, that drone doesn't actually take the D3 or D6. It only takes 1 mortal wound. And that's crucial. Just taking that 1 mortal wound opposed to D3, it just changes the whole way of, just absorbing the actual damage itself.
Absolutely. So, I mean, what I suppose my little bit of tech for that list is, because there will be people that listen to this that play Tau. Then they'll be thinking, well, hang on a minute, this list is not new. It's been around a long time. So the big things that I would suggest, the big things that actually make this potentially a game changer, is the fact that is the select your own sets. So before, when people were playing with the broadside heavy lists. They were very much playing the Tau Sept and going for that 5-up Overwatch. But what did happen is they had to rely extremely heavily on their marker lights because they weren't able to avoid the penalty for moving and shooting, which is one thing. And also on top of that, they didn't have the additional AP from the hardened warheads. So they were finding that actually, those ignore line of sight smart missile systems were not particularly punishing. The big change with this list now, where actually it's worth like re-looking at, is the fact that one, you can be slightly more mobile because you have got that move and shoot at no penalty, and then secondly, the fact that you're depending on basically 3 units in your whole list is now the secondary gun is actually painful and able to do damage. It gives you that fact that actually everything coming out of that unit is really, really useful. So if you kind of listen to this and you're like, well, look, hang on a minute, you don't tell me how to suck eggs. I've already played this list before. Well, you have, but it's definitely worth looking at it again because it is actually quite a bit different. So yeah. But I think, well done again. Good performance. Cracking result. So yeah. Anything more that we wanted to kind of highlight on your list before we move on to mine?
I think that's it, really, John. Like, if I was going to rate that as like easy, hard, or medium mode, I'd probably say for me that was probably easy mode of playing a tournament.
Yes, I think. Look. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is, but it is also, as you found out in your test games, if you play it wrong, and a lot of that is almost at the deployment phase, so you can potentially lose that game and lose that army just by deploying your army wrong.
Deployment is massive. Like, coming from being primarily an Orc Gene Stealer cult player, I found Tau a lot easier to play than I did, the like the Orcs, for instance. As in, like, there's not much you have to do upon it. There's no psychic to remember. But the beautiful thing about that list was there wasn't too many mechanics I had to remember.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. And like simplifying your army up to having less multiple units to worry about made it a lot easier. As like my York army, I've got loads of different stats I've got to remember. I've got loads of different type of guns I've got to remember. Primarily, we're always hitting on 5s and 6s regardless. So if I fail on that, it's not really an issue. But the mechanics were simple, and I liked it.
Nice.
I did like it, and that was, that for me was a real plus. That was a real bonus. So I did enjoy it on that side. So that was really cool.
And it's also, I think, we kind of joked about it and wound you up quite heavily before the event, but actually there is, I mean, we're quite fortunate because on the channel we've got access to probably almost every army in the game. But there is something to be said about being a better player and learning to play lots of different armies, understanding, more than one army, because it does make you a better player, because it gives you a better understanding of a wider variety of play styles and armies as a whole. And I think the one thing that it definitely would have given you from the weekend is it would have given you a much closer idea of exactly how Tau work, and kind of get a bit of a better idea from that. So it's got some huge benefits just outside of the idea of just picking a really strong army. It also benefits you from will make you a better player to understand an army a bit better as well.
Do you know what? You're spot on there, and that was the whole intention. So the weekend was to play an army that I don't always play, and then learn different techniques, different ways of playing different things. And it's always good to learn your enemy, play your enemy, so you understand your enemy better.
Absolutely. So moving on to my army, much more of a stranger out there, kind of not necessarily typical Tau list. So this will be maybe a little bit of an eye opener for a few people. So definitely listen to this one, because this might give you some quite crazy eye opening ideas on the new Tau. So my list consisted, similar to Darren's, it consisted of 2 battalions, and it consisted of mine consisted of a flyer detachment. So in the 1st Battalion, which again was hardened warheads, but rather than be stabilization systems, because I didn't have any battle suits really, I had gifted pilots. And what gifted pilots gives you is if you move less than half distance, you can reroll 1s to wound, which is incredibly strong. Anything in the game that you can manipulate the wound roll is probably some of the strongest abilities that there are. They're extremely strong. So I had that on the 1st Battalion. So in the 1st Battalion, I had 2 Fireblades. Fireblades was really good, really reliable marker lights. They're always handy. 3 units of Fire Warriors, and each of those Fire Warriors had a marker light in them as well. So that was nice, because it just gives you a little bit of extra marker lights. Quite often they'll miss because they're only hitting on 4s, but still it's nice to have that little bit extra marker light support. I then had in the heavy support, I had 3 of the hammerheads. The hammerheads had ion cannons, and they had smart missile systems, and 2 of the what are they called? They are called Seeker missiles. That's it. So yeah, so Seeker missiles. So all the same, that was them. Then I had another battalion. In the next battalion, I had a Fireblade, and I had a commander. My commander was in Cold Star armor. The Cold Star armor was just really handy because it meant that I had the ability to keep up with the rest of my army if I wanted to, and also gave me the ability to, if I wanted to go and alpha strike something, then I could do. The Cold Star was a little bit interesting. He was set up with missiles, again making the most out of the hardened warheads. So he had 4 missile pods, which is really nice because they're all -2, which is handy. So he was really useful, and it also then gives me the ability to both Monkar and Kayan if I want to. So it's generally always worth having a commander in your list if you can. I then had a 2nd battalion. In the 2nd battalion, again, same traits. This one had, I've just said that, sorry. So it had a Fireblade and the commander, and then I had 3 Fire Warriors, and I had then 3 Sky Rays, and the Sky Rays are just standard. So they've got their 6 Seeker missiles. They've got their marker lights that are equipped with, and they've got smart missile systems. Again, so you can see I'm making full maximum use of my trait to have as many smart missile systems as I can for that hardened warheads. Then I have a flyer detachment, and in the flyer detachment I had 3 of the Sunshark bombers. These guys are really good. Like, probably the biggest surprise of my army is these Sunshark bombers. I've always thought they were a bit rubbish, but actually they were probably some of the best performing units in my army. So definitely ones to look out for. They definitely shocked me. And this detachment, the flyer detachment, was Farsight. And what the Farsight means now is it means that within 12 inches counts as you having a marker light. So it means they're always rerolling 1s, and within 6 inches you're rerolling 1s to wound. So it means that more or less my whole army is rerolling 1s to wound, which is really good. So so 3 of those. They all had missile pods. They had their funny little drones that are actually really strong, and it had Seeker missiles as well. So that's that. And then the list was finished off by 2 Remora drones. These are the Forge World guys, tiny little flyers, really cheap and cheerful. But again, they've got 2 Seeker missiles, they've got a marker light, and they've got the high impact burst cannons. So lots of shots. And they're able to kind of like fly around and just be a bit of a nuisance. So really like them. I've always been an absolute fan of the model. I love the little model, so it was cool to use them, and actually they were really handy throughout the weekend. So that was kind of the list. The play style of it is extreme alpha strike. Hits you extremely hard, extremely fast, and the plan of it is that it cripples you so much that you can't then retaliate in the next turn, because it consists heavily of seeker missiles. Obviously, with all the racks from the sky rays, the fact that all the tanks and the flyers all have seeker missiles as well, you're very much depending on one use weapons, which is great, but you need to make sure that you absolutely cripple your opponent, because if you don't cripple them, you'll find that when you get to your turn 2, your army is not as effective as it was in turn 1. So you have to make sure that first turn's absolutely crucial and you absolutely put the hammer down. So it's very much around that alpha strike. The nice thing about it is it can very much beta strike as well, because it has a huge amount of range. So if you want, you can hold it back, particularly if you think your opponent doesn't have the range to hit you. You can hide back, and then allow your opponent to do very little, and then hit them in return with the beta strike, and again cripple them before they can hit you back the second time. It also has access to a lot of mortal wounds, because basically there's two different ways it can score mortal wounds. One, it can score mortal wounds by the bombers themselves can fly over you and they can drop a bomb, and that's really, really good, particularly good against infantry. And so that's one way that it can do damage to you. The second way it can do damage to you is there's a new stratagem within the new book where you pick up to three flyer units, and then any units within 3 inches of them on a 4+ do D3 mortal wounds. So more ways that you can score mortal wounds on your opponent. So it's all about absolutely maximizing that mortal wound output in that first turn, absolutely maximizing the missiles that's going out. It's got loads and loads of marker lights. So again, you're making sure you get loads of marker lights on things. You're hitting things really, really hard. If they're in cover, you've got tons and tons of smart missile systems so you can ignore cover. So yeah, so ultimately the name of the game with this list is hit your opponent as hard as you absolutely possibly can. Do not allow them to hit you back, because when they hit you back, you're not that resilient. So unlike Darren, where he has got tons and tons of drones to soak up that kind of hit, in my army, I don't have that. I mean, vehicles are quite resilient, but I have basically no invuln saves in the whole of my army. So it is just a case of I need to hit something so hard that it can't hit me back. So that's the name of the game. Really fun list to play. Yeah, I mean, it's maybe not fun for your opponent, because it does hit them so hard that it can be a bit demoralizing, but it's fun as far as it's extremely mobile. It gets all over the board. Yeah, it's really cool, and it looks cool as well, because it's just like tons of tanks and flyers, so it looks awesome on the board. So yeah, I really, really enjoy the list. I played something fairly similar in the early stages of 8th, so it's nice to kind of pick it up again, and this is so much better than it was. So my first game was a grudge match, so I challenged Mike to a Tau on Tau grudge match, and he had kind of the new crisis bomb. He had it as so he had very similar sort of traits as I did. So he had kind of ignore the penalties for moving, and hardened warheads as well. So he had like missile pods on all his suits. He had 7 suits. He had the Riptide with this horrendous new Reddit gun. He had loads and loads of shooting. He got first turn, so what I had to do was I had to make sure that I minimized the amount of damage I was going to take. So I moved everything and backlined it, because I knew that if I could survive, then I could come back on him. He had a lot of stuff that was going to ignore cover, but I still popped the stratagem for prepared positions to make sure that if anything hit me that didn't have ignored cover, that I could effectively try and survive a little bit. So he hit me incredibly hard in the first turn. He managed to get he had a fusion commander that jumped him, So he had 4 fusion guns. He had his Riptide that has like a 70-inch range and has the new Relic gun. And then he had his suits that, even though he couldn't get all of his suits in range, he managed to get, I think, 4 or 5 of them in range. And basically, each one of those units took out one of my tanks. So I lost all 3 of my Hammerheads first turn, which was pretty scary. I thought I was in a lot of trouble. So really at that point, I'm kind of a bit like, right, well, I need to keep to my game plan, which is hit him so hard in my turn with what I've got left that he can't do that again. And he had broadsides as well. So he had 1 unit of broadsides, and then he had obviously the Riptide, as I said. So in my mind, I looked at his list and I was like, well, I'm going to struggle to kill the broadsides. They're on 2-up save. They've got drones in front of them. I'm going to struggle to kill the Riptide. Again, he has a 3-up invuln on him, and he's behind drones. What I am going to try and kill is I'm going to try to kill his suits, and I'm going to try and kill all his Markalites and supporting characters that were kind of just hidden behind. So I flew all the planes over. I bombed a load of stuff. I then mortal wounded a load of stuff. I killed all but 1 of his suits. I killed pretty much all his fire warriors. I killed most of his drones. So he had 30 drones by the end of his first turn. I think he had about 5 left. And so I actually came out of my turn 1 not killing as much as I would have liked, but killing enough to make a bit of a dent. He then, in his return turn, he was very unlucky. So he did the right thing. He targeted the flyers because they were the thing that were going to continue to give him a lot of grief, and he managed to not kill any of them. So in his second turn, he killed nothing at all, which was huge for me. Because one thing's for certain, after that, I was not going to allow him to do that again. Because then in my second turn, I pretty much crippled his whole army. I killed most of his broadsides, killed the last of his drones, killed all his suits, killed all his troops, left him more or less with a Riptide. So and after that, was able to kind of pull clear and put a big score on the board. But that game very much was around just making sure that when I got the opportunity, that I picked on the right targets, and that I piled on the pressure that if he didn't have a really good turn in turn 2, I was going to make sure that I wasn't going to let him get away with it. But I was quite fortunate because his first turn was absolutely brutal, absolutely incredibly powerful. Yeah, so that was my first game. So it's good. My second game, I played against Adam and his Gene Stealers / Gene Stealer cult. And if I'm being brutally honest, that was a terrible matchup for him. He tried his best, but I was able to dispatch pretty much 60 Gene Stealers in my first turn.
It's kind of like the most horriblest setup that any Tyranny player would want to come up against.
Yeah, it was absolutely horrendous.
Can't lock you in combat. You're going to screen them out as best you can for the ones that are going to be coming in from reserves. Yeah, that's absolutely brutal.
Yeah, it was insane. There was literally nothing he could do about it. It was just it was horrendous. It was a terrible matchup. He had Swarm Lord died straight away to me. He had more or less nothing left by the end of his first turn. So I mean, Adam's a great guy. It was good fun, but I didn't really learn anything about the list from that. I mean, the only thing you can do, is exactly as you said, to make sure that I didn't want to get attacked in one condensed area. So I made sure I was really well spread. So if he was going to hit me, he was going to have to kind of hit me spread out, and I'd be able to pick him back off that way. But yeah, not just a really bad matchup in that one. Then my third game was against James and his Rainbow Marines, again, I had first turn, and I pretty much destroyed his entire army first turn. He had very little left. He had some reserves, so he had drop pods and stuff like that that did allow him to bring some stuff in turn 2, and he did really well with what he had. He ground out some points, but again, I was just able to completely cripple him. Just made sure that when I did cripple him, I took a lot of the board as well. It's really important. With that list, you can't, as much as it's tempting to kind of sit in a corner and shoot because you've got loads of range, you also want to be advancing up and cutting down room, making sure that everything is getting its full assortment of weapons in. The smart missile systems obviously are only 30-inch range, so you want to be moving them up as quick as possible so they've got really good field of fire. So that's what I did. Sort of zoned him out as much as possible, and then just slowly but surely picked him up. So yeah, really, really good game. The smart missiles just deal with Marines so well with a -1. They just don't like that. But when they're on a 4-up save,
of course, mine was the -2.
Yeah, yours were the -2, which was even better. But yeah, it's just I mean, Marines they do not like that. So then my game 4 was against Scott, your final game, so Scott was really excited. He doesn't normally end up getting in the top tables very often, so I think he was getting a bit of a nosebleed, but he had a really good list. He did have a really good list, and we've talked about it before, so I won't go over it in detail. He again got first turn, and I backlined. We worked it out that his bikes, I needed to be 42 inches back from him, and because his range was 41 with all the movements and whatever. So I basically made sure that only the speeders were going to be able to do any damage to me. He did try and pull that fast one, same with you, Darren, cheeky little swine. So he used his stratagem to double move his guys, but then I punished him by using the Neuro Scrambler, which he was already on a -1 for advancing, and then I put on an additional -1. So his bikes weren't hitting anything. And then he forgot to charge. To be fair, I forgot as well. I would have absolutely reminded him, but he didn't remember until halfway through my shooting in the next turn. So, top tip, make sure you remember if you're going to try and punish someone, remember to actually charge. But anyway, and yes, so he managed to kill 1 tank, which was pretty good. But then in return, then I pretty much killed his whole army again. Killed all his bikes. So I didn't go for the church. I just kind of the advantage of my army over yours is majority of my army hits on 3s. And a lot of my army has velocity tracker. So if I'm hitting against something with fly, I get +1 against it. So it means that I'm not suffering so much from the -1, and because of the re-rolling hits from 1s from marker lights generally, and the re-rolling 1s from the wounds from my skilled pilots,
you've got
I'm not as worried.
Sorry, John, your mic. You
cutting out a bit.
No, it's just wait. I can hear it knocking off something.
Okay, well, hopefully it's better now. With the combination of the two, it just meant that I could not worry so much about the church. So I went in and I killed everything else. So my first turn, I killed all his scouts, I killed all his speeders, I killed all his bikes and a couple of characters. So
that your army didn't need to worry about that -1.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, because both the sets of tanks, so the hammerheads and the sky rays are both ballistic skill 3+ rather than 4+ that Tau mostly have. So that makes them that much more accurate, which is really, really good. And then I've got so many marker lights. Because all of my vehicles have kind of marker lights as well. It means that I'm effectively putting quite a lot of marker lights on everything. So I really don't need to worry about it. I mean, my sky rays were hitting his things with fly on 2+, even with a minus.
Wow.
So yeah, it's obscene. So I dispatched him, which was good. So I basically got to my game 5 really, with the exception of my very first game where the first turn was a bit squeaky bum, but apart from that, I got to my last game without really breaking a sweat. But it did change quite quickly because, as you said, rightly so, Steph is extremely good player, and his Grey Knights are a nasty matchup. So against him, he did very similar to you. He kind of hid, played very defensively. And I already guessed what he was going to do. He was going to try and beta strike me turn 2 with as many smites as he could. So what I did was on my first turn, I advanced everything up as far as I could. I knew everything was basically going to be more or less out of range, but I put everything because the only things that would have been in range were the stuff that needed line of sight, and he was all hiding in ruins. So I advanced everything up. So I took the middle of the board, and then he didn't really have anywhere good to bring his stuff in because he could see what would happen when he brought his stuff in. So then on my next turn, on my turn 2, I then advanced pretty much everything up again. Well, not quite advanced, but I moved everything right up. So I tried to pretty much zone him out of the board. And then while I was doing that, my flyers were basically doing loop-the-loops. So they were going from one side of this deployment zone to the other. He did stop me from bombing him. What he couldn't do was stop me doing the mortal wound. So I was mortal wounding him. I was also shooting at him with the flyers as well, chipping away slowly but surely, like killing off strike squads and interceptors to avoid him from doing as many smites. His turn 3, he actually, he was pretty much close to giving up because I was so far clear points wise. There was very little he could do at that point. So he was pretty much down and out, but he did, and this is kind of top tip, I got a bit complacent because I could have at the end of turn 2 absolutely zoned him out. I could have stopped him from getting in at all, but I kind of was like, well, I'm 15 points clear. He's never going to be able to win this game now. It doesn't really matter if I zone him out or not. So I allowed him, not purposely, but not. I just could have done it. I could have done it better. I allowed him to get his Dread Knights onto the board. So he got all his 3 Dread Knights on the board on turn 3, and he got his remaining reserves on as well. And the game swung dramatically. So he made a few kind of really fortunate plays. He made some smart moves. He made some tactical, really good, clever stuff, which is why he's a top player. And then he absolutely destroyed me then for the next like two and a half turns. He ran through me. He showed how quickly and easily it is to kill my tanks if you get the opportunity. Until the end of the game, I was basically cowering in my deployment zone with some fire warriors on some objectives and a couple of characters, and I ended up winning the game by a point. So I was very fortunate because he was really coming back into it hard. But again, when things were starting to swing, and I knew that I was points up, some kind of key tips around tactics wise are, as soon as I could see he was now on top, I added up the points on the sheet and I worked out how many points I was likely to get for the rest of the game and how many points he was likely to get for the rest of the game. And I was kind of like almost like counting it down each turn. So I knew he was going to win every turn for the remainder of the game, but I just had to make sure that he wasn't going to win big enough to stop me from winning the game. So I was planning around that every game, every turn from then on in. And also I was starting to go into defense mode. So I was going into like, what can I hide? What can I make sure he doesn't table me? What can I do to play some character shenanigans to make sure that my fire blades were behind other things? They couldn't get targeted to slow him down again. So it was all around, like I could tell I was losing by that point. Even though I wasn't losing overall, I was losing each battle round, and I had to think about how I was going to win overall. And that was a really kind of clever, or I suppose not clever, but that was a really, that was where my game plan had to be really spot on to be able to deliver that overall victory. And I just pulled it off. But it was, the lessons I learned from it was by far, if I had absolutely, not given him a sliver of hope at the top of my turn 2, then it would have been game over then. I could have wrapped up the game at the end of turn 2/3, and I would have had a couple of hours to chill out and celebrate my victory. But instead, I gave him that
Yeah,
slimmer of
right, yeah.
hope, and yeah, absolutely, and that's what a good player will do to you. If you make a mistake or you give them the glimmer of hope, they will punish you for it, and that's exactly what Steph did. He punished me, and rightly so. So I definitely learned from that a lot. So yeah, and ultimately got the win. So was chuffed to bits to get my first place. It's been my first GT win for a little while, so it was nice to get on the podium and take it home. But I would say the list is really good, really good. So by all means, email me at twisteddiceace at gmail.com if you want the details of the list. I can send them to you. And we're more than happy to help you with kind of tactics in the future. If you want more in-depth tactical advice, you can go over to Patreon, back us over there, and we're more than happy to kind of talk through some more tactical stuff with you. I think we're very much hoping that this will be one of our first kind of videos and podcasts on this, because we'd like to do a bit more. I know you'd like to cover some details on the Orcs, Darren.
Oh, hell yeah.
So when we get the new Orcs drop, then Darren will get some games under his belt, and we'll bring you some Orc tactics. I did extremely well last year with Tyranids, so I'll definitely be bringing you some Tyranid tactics as well.
You got for the
So
greater
we're
good,
planning
for the greater war.
the Great Wow, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so we're looking forward to bringing you some more tactical videos. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you've got any questions or anything you're interested in from this, then please do put it in the comments below. We're more than happy to answer your questions. But I think that's about us for today, Darren. If there's anything else that you wanted to share with the guys.
Yeah. No, that's pretty much it. But please do come check us out on Facebook, and of course on all the other platforms as well. All the support is always appreciated, and feedback, comments. You know, we really do thrive on them. So much appreciated wherever they come, positive or negative. We all take them on board.
Absolutely. But thank you very much for listening, watching, all that good stuff. And we will see you in a video or a podcast real soon. Bye for now.
Catch you all later, guys and girls.